Numot the Devastator is a powerful dragon of the Jeskai colors. He has the tabooed ability of destroying your opponent's land. Now be advised, before playing this deck, I would recommend giving your opponents, if not just the smallest courtesy, of the heads up that you are about to play him, as he can induce saltiness and rage quitting from your opponents. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Looking at Numot, he costs 3 colorless and Jeskai, so 6 mana altogether, for a 6/6 flying dragon. He has the ability which reads, whenever Numot the Devastator deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 colorless and a red. If you do, destroy up to 2 target lands. Now it's important to note that you don't have to destroy the lands of the person you've dealt damage to. So if somebody doesn't have a flyer, you can swing in, hit them for 6 in the air, and then to another player you could blow up 2 of their lands. This is important to note just so you can spread the hate out as much as you want to. You also don't have to necessarily destroy lands if you don't want to, but I will say that is the overall archetype of this deck. Alrighty, next up on the hate train, we have Ajani Vengeant. 2 colorless and Boros gets you a 3 loyalty planeswalker. His +1 reads, target permanent doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, so you can go ahead and throw that at a land or maybe a threatening creature to protect Ajani. His -2 is a little less exciting, which is he deals 3 damage to target creature or player and you gain 3 life. And his -7, his ultimate, the main reason he's here, which is destroy all lands target player controls. 9 times out of 10, that's going to be an end game for somebody. It's very hard to get up after all of your lands have been destroyed. So if you've been swinging with Numot at somebody and somebody's been fortunate enough to not have the dragon blaring down on them, Johnny can go ahead and swoop in and finish what has been started. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This isn't very fair. Your opponents will tell you, how would you feel if this happened to you? You're making me uncomfortable. How would you like it if all of your lands got destroyed? All of the Thran, for 5 colorless and 1 white, you get an enchantment saga. Its first step is destroy all lands, so there you go, destroy all lands including mine. Now its second part, I'm calling them parts. Each player returns 2 land cards from their graveyard to the battlefield. So see, that's pretty good. Your opponents will at least get 2 back, and then so will you. And then its third, I'm still calling it part, is the same thing. Each player returns 2 land cards from their graveyard to the battlefield. Now, there's really no way to abuse. Look, it's Remorseful Cleric. For only 2 mana, 1 colorless and 1 white, you get a 2/1 flyer. Remorseful Cleric has the ability, sacrifice Remorseful Cleric, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. My god, just 2 mana. But on a serious note, the way this works, Fall of Thran enters the battlefield, blows up all lands, you play Remorseful Cleric, sacrifice it, and hose 1 unlucky soul's graveyard, so they do not have the land slowly coming back from the second portions of Fall of the Thran. 9 times out of 10, this is just going to be a game ender for somebody. Most people cannot get back up from that, and it's just going to be over. But you do have to sacrifice Remorseful Cleric, so at least you don't have to worry about, well, at least your opponents don't have to worry about this coming back. Now Sun Titan, here's a good guy people can get behind. For 4 colorless and 2 white, you get a 6/6 vigilant creature. Sun Titan has the fun ability, which is whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, so 2 separate triggers, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now what are some good 2 or 3 drops that we could reoccur with Sun Titan? But all in all, Sun Titan is a great creature, and you're going to have no shortage of value when running him in this deck. Now, all jokes aside, we don't want to make our opponents, which were theoretically our friends, we don't want to make them needlessly suffer. So Aggravated Assault is going to help finish everybody at the table off. For just 2 colorless and 1 red, you get an enchantment with the ability pay 3 colorless and 2 red, untap all creatures you control. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery, so in your first main phase of your turn. This is just going to allow you to have an additional combat step with Numot or any of your other creatures, which is more damage, more blown up lands, quicker death for your opponents, and allows you to get on to the next game. Following the same principle, we're going to have Hellkite Charger. For 4 colorless and 2 red, you get a Flying Haste 5/5 dragon. he has the ability which reads, whenever Hellkite Charger attacks, you may pay 5 colorless and 2 red. If you do, untap all attacking creatures, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So he doesn't necessarily have to deal combat damage, he just has to be swinging and attacking, and because he has haste, you can do this very quickly. Now, you do have to have a respectable amount of mana to do this on the same turn, but all the same, he's just a combat enabler, giving you multiple opportunities to blow up people's lands and giving you multiple opportunities to deal a lot of damage in the air to just finish your opponents off as quickly as possible. To soften the blow of the hate storm that will be blown your way, we have cards like Norn's Annex. Norn's Annex is just 3 colorless and 2 Phyrexian mana, for a white artifact that reads, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 white Phyrexian mana for each of those creatures. So if your opponent does not have access to white mana, then they're looking at paying 2 life for each of those creatures. And if Numot has been blowing up their lands, then they have even less resources. This is less resources for them to cast spells, hurt you. This is overall an excellent card. And to further tie up your opponent for resources, we run copies of both Ghostly Prison and Propaganda, so that your opponent has to pay in order to harm you with their creatures. So just more tying up your opponent in resource denial. Alrighty guys, thank you for getting this far in the video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said in the beginning, this is a fairly aggressive, fairly unpleasant deck to be on the other end of, but it is still fun to get to play these decks sometimes, you know, just to get to see what it feels like, even if it does break the social contract. But I would definitely not have this be the deck that, you know, you play all the time. I would have it be the deck that you play at the end of the night, or if you're playing competitively at an event and you don't really care how the other people feel. Or you know, if each person at the table has a high power level or a janky deck that they want to give a try, then that would be the appropriate place for this. Now, I will say the financial toll of this deck is pretty high, as you can see at over $2,000. But I really optimized the mana base, at least I did in my opinion, but you could easily soften some of this by putting in some tap lands and, you know, things like that, which if you're going to be blowing up your opponent's land, I suppose you running tap lands is, you know, the least you could do for them. Only other thing I wanted to mention when I was doing this deck tech is that we have a lot of ways to protect us when playing this hateful deck. So when you do look at the deck list, which I will link in the description below, pay particular attention to the 22 additional spells that we run, just because that's going to be a lot of the protection that you need when running this evil maniacal deck. But guys, as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you aren't already subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe with notifications on so you can stay tuned in to all the deck techs that I do. As well, if you can find the time to leave a like, a comment, share the video, anything like that, it really helps the channel out quite a bit. Guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.